From the outside, the headlines about Rodrigo Duterte are easy to see. The international condemnation, the outrage, the brutal drug war. The world mostly sees a strongman, a populist who unleashed a bloody campaign on his own people. But as a Filipino who lived through his presidency, I saw something different on the ground. I saw passionate, everyday people who weren't just supporters, they were true believers. So, what gives? Why did millions of Filipinos rally behind a leader so heavily criticized by the rest of the world? This isn't about defending him. It's about understanding why it happened. To do that, we have to look at the Philippines he inherited, a country that, for many, felt like it was on the verge of collapse. To get why a guy like Duterte was so appealing, you first have to feel the frustration that came before him. For years, many ordinary Filipinos felt like they were living in a country that was actively failing them. There was this quiet anger simmering just under the surface. It wasn't just one thing, it was 1,000 little cuts that left people feeling completely powerless. First, there was crime. In many poorer neighborhoods, crime wasn't a news story, it was a daily reality. Drug use, especially meth or shabu, was seen as a cancer, tearing families apart. People were genuinely afraid in their own communities. They saw their kids exposed to dangers the government seemed unable or unwilling to stop. On top of that, the justice system was a joke, notoriously slow and for most, deeply unfair. It was a system where the rich and connected could literally get away with murder, while the poor were left to rot in overcrowded jails. That feeling of injustice was powerful. Then you had the government itself. For decades, Philippine politics has been controlled by the same handful of powerful families, these political dynasties. To a lot of Filipinos, these elites, usually based in what we call Imperial Manila, seem to live in a totally different world. They spoke polished English, they moved in elite circles, and their promises of change felt empty, election after election. People just felt that corruption was everywhere and that the whole system was rigged. This mix of rampant crime, a broken justice system, and a political class that just didn't get it created a massive desire for anyone, drastically different. People weren't just unhappy, they were fed up. They were tired of the same old story. And into this perfect storm of frustration walked Rodrigo Duterte, not as a politician, but as an avenger. Duterte didn't show up on the national stage like a typical presidential candidate. He was rough around the edges, unpolished, and he didn't apologize for any of it. And for a nation sick of smooth-talking politicians, that was his superpower. His authenticity felt real and it was electric. Here was a guy who spoke the language of the streets. He cursed, he told off-color jokes, and he threatened criminals in plain, blunt language that everyone understood. To the outside world, this was shocking, completely unpresidential. But to many Filipinos, it was a sign that he was one of them. He wasn't some manufactured politician from a dynasty. He felt like one of them, someone who got their anger because he seemed to share it. They didn't see his gruffness as a bad thing, they saw it as proof that he was honest. And he came with what looked like a track record, Davao City. Duterte served as mayor of this major city for 7 terms. His supporters would point to Davao as proof that his methods worked. Look at Davao, they'd say, it's one of the safest cities in the country now. He built this powerful narrative that he had tamed a chaotic city and could do the same for the whole nation. He wasn't just making promises, he was showing them a resume. This all fed into the craving people had for strong, decisive leadership. Duterte sold himself as the ultimate outsider, the Punisher, who would smash through the bureaucracy and corruption that had held the country back for so long. He promised radical, fast change, not slow reform. He wasn't afraid to pick fights with the political old guard, the powerful Catholic Church, or even international groups. For a country that felt like it was drifting without a leader, his iron-fisted style felt like the only medicine strong enough to work. And then came the main event of his presidency, the war on drugs. This is by far the most controversial and bloody part of his rule. It's the reason for the international condemnation and charges of crimes against humanity. Official government data acknowledges over 6,200 deaths during police operations, but human rights organizations estimate the actual death toll could be as high as 30,000 when including vigilante-style killings. From the outside, the support for such a brutal campaign is hard to understand, but from the inside, for many, It was a bitter pill they were willing to swallow. To get this, you have to remember that feeling of desperation. Many Filipinos, especially in communities hit hard by the drug trade, saw these extreme measures as a necessary evil to take back their streets and give their kids a future. They saw the drug problem as an actual war, and in war, there are casualties. Duterte was a master at framing the issue. He split society into two clear groups, the good law-abiding citizens and the pass-away or troublemakers, the drug addicts and criminals. His message was brutally simple. If you're a good person, you have nothing to worry about. This violent campaign wasn't against you, it was against them, the people who were ruining society. That logic, no matter how flawed, really hit home. For a lot of his supporters, the debate over human rights felt like a luxury they couldn't afford. When your main worry is putting food on the table and making sure your kids get home safe, ideas like due process can feel very distant. They saw Duterte's war as a trade-off. Some people lose their rights in exchange for the feeling of safety for everyone else. In their minds, he was finally doing what past leaders were too weak or too corrupt to do: take decisive, drastic action to solve a problem they lived with every single day. This is obviously a really complex and divisive topic, and I know hearing these perspectives can be challenging. If you're finding this analysis useful and want to understand more of the nuanced stories from this part of the world, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We definitely need more spaces for these kinds of difficult conversations. All of this created a huge disconnect between how Duterte was seen around the world and how he was seen at home. International media mostly painted him as a dangerous authoritarian, a monster who was destroying human rights and democracy. Their reports focused on the grim body count of the drug war, his wild statements, and the threat he posed. But for his supporters in the Philippines, this was often just noise, or even worse, foreign meddling. They didn't see a monster. They saw a protector, a strong father figure they affectionately called Tatay Digong, or Father Digong. His approval ratings, which consistently stayed sky high, completely baffled international observers. Sometimes this international criticism actually helped him. Duterte and his supporters would spin the backlash as an attack on the Philippines' sovereignty. They painted him as a defiant leader standing up to Western bullies and their colonial attitudes. This tapped into a deep sense of nationalism, turning foreign criticism into just one more reason to support him. It became a classic US against the world story, and it worked. Many Filipinos felt that outsiders just didn't get their reality, the reality of daily crime and a failing system, and so they had no right to judge the man who, in their eyes, was finally trying to fix it. Even after leaving office, Duterte's influence is still a powerful force in the Philippines. He was arrested by Philippine authorities on March 11, 2025, and surrendered to the International Criminal Court the next day to face charges of crimes against humanity. But his brand of politics, built on toughness and populism, still has a strong appeal. In a surprising turn, while in ICC custody, Duterte even won the mayoral election in his home city of Davao in the May 2025 elections. The political landscape is now shaped by the fallout from his presidency. The once powerful alliance between his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has publicly collapsed, splitting the country's leadership into rival camps. This feud between two of the country's most powerful political families is setting the stage for future political showdowns. Meanwhile, his arrest by the ICC has split the country. For human rights advocates and the victims' families, it's a long-awaited first step toward accountability. But for his loyal supporters, it's seen as a national insult, the ultimate proof that foreign powers are trying to take down a Filipino leader who fought for them. As of August 2025, Duterte remains in ICC custody, but his base of support is as strong as ever, and the Duterte name still commands incredible loyalty. His legacy isn't just in the past, it's actively shaping the Philippines' turbulent present and future. So, why did so many Filipinos back Duterte? It wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of deep frustration with a broken system, a desperate need for safety and order, and the arrival of a charismatic leader who promised to burn it all down and start fresh. He was seen as a radical, maybe even brutal, but necessary solution to problems that the polished, out-of-touch elite had ignored for decades. This perspective doesn't erase the suffering or justify the thousands of deaths that happened under his rule, but it does help explain the paradox of his popularity. It shows that for many people, the promise of a safer tomorrow was worth the terrifying price of today. Now that you've heard the local side of the story, does it change how you see his presidency? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know what you think, respectfully, in the comments below.